Grids. Grids are loved by designers the world over for laying things out. They make things look beautiful. And you can have grids in After Effects and Premiere. They don't have that functionality built in, but using Illustrator and Photoshop, we can get that functionality. We're going to start by getting Illustrator to do the maths for us. Then we're going to get Photoshop to lay out the guides. Then we're going to import that sucker into After Effects. We're going to use that grid in Premiere. What? Yes. And finally, you can subscribe to my channel if you want. Let's get started. Part 1. Get Illustrator to do the maths. We're in Adobe Illustrator. I have an artboard set up and I'm just going to click at the top left here and drop in a rectangle. The rectangle is going to be the size of the grid that I want. First thing to do when your rectangle is made is go to the object path and then offset path, and this is going to set the size of the margin that we want. We're going to inset our grid. So I want it to be 150 pixels, so I will offset it by minus 150 pixels, which as you can see is going to give us 150 pixels all the way around. So the next thing to do is go to your object menu, go to path, go to split into grid, and it's going to chop up your rectangle. Turn on preview so you can see what you're doing. Chop up your rectangle into a number of rows and columns. As you can see, as I click up and down on the rows or the columns, it automatically changes the width for you. So it's doing all of the hard work. I hold down the shift key and I'm going to tap that a couple of times and add a gutter of 20 pixels. So that's the space in between your rows and columns. And it's important, if you want your grid to be pixel perfect, to ensure that the height and width are whole numbers. As you can see here, these are not whole numbers. So by playing around with the number of columns and rows, eventually, hopefully, you're going to hit on something that is a whole number like that one, 162. Do note, however, that sometimes by clicking up and down, the gutter will inexplicably become 0 pixels and you'll have to hold down shift or just type in the number again to get it back to where it was. And eventually, hopefully, I've already done the maths, so I can see that rows of 5, columns of 10 with these values are going to yield nice round numbers for our height and width. You will need these numbers in Photoshop, which is where we're actually going to create the guides. This is just doing the maths. And so you just need to write these down, take a screenshot, get a pen and scrawl the numbers on your arm, whatever you need to do to remember them for the next stage. Part 2, get Photoshop to lay out your guides. This is Adobe Photoshop. I'm going to make a new document that's 1920 by 1080 pixels, and I'll head up to the view menu and choose new guide layout. Now, recalling the example that we had before, choose something completely different so I can type it in for you. We had 10 columns with a 20 pixel gutter. We had 5 rows with a 20 pixel gutter, and our margin was 150 pixels all the way around. I've got clear existing guides on even though there weren't any to begin with, and when I hit OK, that is a pixel perfect grid using the values that we figured out in Adobe Illustrator. If I go in here, if I select it, fill it in, zoom all the way, and you can see that really is pixel perfect. That is crisp. You could set your watch to that edge and we have our grid. Now save that as a pixel perfect grid, put it somewhere that you're going to find it later, and we move on to Adobe After Effects. Part 3, import that sucker into Adobe After Effects. So I'm going to choose, this is the file that we just saved, Pixel Perfect Grid, and import as composition. Don't worry about any of this stuff, there aren't really any layers in it. But when I import it as a composition, if it's a PSD, Photoshop native file, then when I open it up and the original had guides in it, then this version will have guides in it. Of course, that would be off right now. Show guides. There is the Pixel Perfect Grid. And just to demonstrate that it is indeed a pixel perfect grid, if I make a shape layer with a rectangle, for example, again, just drag it out there. Oh, it's not snapping. If turned on snap to guides. Okay, now grab and snappity snap, snap, snap. zoom in on that, and you can see that is really pixel perfect sharp. If I move it even a little smidge, you can see it gets all that anti-aliasing happening. You know, anti-aliasing is great, got nothing against it exactly, but is there anything that's satisfying as a completely perfectly aligned shape element? If there is, I don't want to know about it. But for use that grid in Premiere, what? Yes. Now, a lot of tutorials will probably just leave it there after encompassing 3 apps already probably some sort of record. We're going to take in a 4th. We're not going to quit. We're in After Effects. We want our guides to be in Premiere. So I'm going to go to the View menu. I'm going to go Export Guides. And you get to create a .guides file. Give it a name like Pixel Perfect Grid. And hit Save. And now, in Premiere Pro, make myself a little sequence here. Again, that's going to be 1920 by 1080 pixels, same as we've been using the whole time. Already got some guides in there, which I didn't want you to see. Clear that. Okay, pretend there was nothing up my sleeves. And one thing to be aware of is everything that we're going to be doing here is under the View menu. If you have a panel other than the Program panel focused, like Project, with this little blue line around it, then these are all grayed out. So if that's happening to you, if you're experiencing this graying out problem, just come over here and give that some focus, some sweet focus, and now you can see everything here. And actually, here's another one. If guides are off, so show guides are off, you don't get these guys coming up. If that's happening to you, just make sure show guides is on, and now you can play around with these ones. So I've already imported a few here because I got pretty excited about the whole prospect of importing guides. I'm going to go to Manage Guides, and Import, and then navigate my way to where we were. Pixel Perfect Guides, that's the one we just saved. Hit Open. It brings it in as Imported Guides 1, of course. Give it a name, Pixel Perfect Guides, again, Pixel Perfect Guides, and hit OK. And now that will appear under Guide Templates. And there you have it. There are our guides. And they're pixel perfect. I've been saying pixel perfect so much because I'm just so ecstatic about being able to create pixel perfect guides with ease, the right number of rows and columns for any situation. One more thing, the Pixel Perfect Grid Guides file that we created before is a JSON file. JSON is a kind of nerdy JavaScript thing. You don't really need to know too much about it, but if you are the kind of person who cares about that sort of thing, if I open this up in an application like VS Code, looks like total gibberish at the moment, but I'm going to change the file type to JSON and hit Format, and you can see that they are all make a lot of sense, that there's the position of each guide there, whether it's vertical or horizontal, and even the colors in there. So if you wanted to, if you were really invested in this kind of thing, maybe setting up a template for someone else, you could change the guide so that they different colors had different meanings. It's all up to you. Number 5, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you have a like or a subscribe, go ahead, and see you next time.